Cashless society. What is basically meant by a cashless society is physical coins and notes no longer being allowed to be used as a financial tender, basically. Now, we could be potentially walking into a cashless society. That's where the government seems to be trying to push things. And this video is basically to have a chat and basically see what the benefits or disadvantages to small businesses going cashless. Now, everyone uses, well, me, myself, a lot of people use Apple Pay. I don't carry much cash around with me. If I go to the shop, I'll pay with Apple Pay. Go to the garage, put some fuel in, I pay with Apple Pay. But that's my choice to do that. If it turns into a cashless society, you're taking away the people's choice of whether they want to use cash. Now, like I said, I use Apple Pay, but I wouldn't want to be in a position where I couldn't use cash at all. Think about the older generation that basically, that's all they know. They pull their money out of they pull their pensions out of the bank, they have their money in the house, and that's how they budget their day. That's how they budget their life. That's what they know, that's what they feel comfortable with. So for a small business that might have an elderly demographic in work, it could highly affect them because obviously, the older generation might not feel comfortable using technology to pay for things or not understand it and be in a vulnerable state. It is affecting a lot of people that you don't really need to do. Reports claim that cash payments will be obsolete by 2026, and I don't believe that. As I said, you've got your generations that prefer to use cash. What about someone that's basically, struggling financially, and the way they budget is they pull their money out and they set out, right, this is amount for food, this is amount for bills, this is amount for a bit of leisure, and that's how they manage their finances, and they stay above board. With the cashless society, if it was to come into place, how would it affect someone that's got a poor credit rating? Especially if they start in a business and they have a poor credit rating. As most of these cash machines or online payments, they come with up to a 3% transaction charge. If it was a cashless society and was the only way we could do transactions were through these bits of software, they could put any charge that they want on it because we wouldn't have a choice, because we've got to use it. And how will it work for someone that's in an IVA trying to better themselves, or in a debt management plan trying to better themselves, trying to get themselves back on track, but the small margin that they might be making on their business is getting eaten up by a transaction charge that wouldn't have been there if they could pay, people could pay with cash. There's a lot of things that people need to look at in regards to this. Now, we are sleepwalking into a cashless society. A lot of people don't know what a cashless society is, and when it comes, it'll come at a bit of a shock. So you're better off getting prepared just in case. For a small business, as I said, one of the big things is it's going to eat into your margins. If the cost for a transaction is, say, 3%, and your margin, you're only making 5% profit, you've already lost 3%. And obviously that can make it harder. There's also the fact that, what if you live in a rural area where signal isn't very good, or you've got no mobile phone connection, things like that. So it's going to make harder for payments to be made in those sorts of areas as well. How well will they combat that? How, what could be done? There probably is ways around it, but is there a need for it? Also, you've also got to think, you're creating a footprint every transaction you do. Now, the government could look at this. It could even be sold on to the bigger companies and push the little companies out of business. There's a lot of cons into going into a cashless society. Banks can charge whatever interest they want at a drop of a hat, and it just happens. It's just For me, I don't want to go into cashless society, and I will be looking at ways in which I can prevent it if I can, whether it be through peaceful protest. Why the government wanted to go to a cashless society is the benefits for them really are obviously the illegal trade, drug dealers, things like that, money laundering, tax evasion, and they're all legitimate reasons to go into it. But you've also got to think there's always ways around things. I don't condone it, but a drug dealer will find a way to be a drug dealer in a cashless society or otherwise. Same as everything else, So to go into a cashless society solely for those reasons, I don't think is right, because it's not going to stop it. It's going to potentially slow it down for a minute, but they'll always find a way around it. So that's the only benefit that I can see within a cashless society, but the cons way outweigh the benefit. Another bad side to go in a cashless society is, what if the software that's being used to take in payments and things like that has got bugs in it, constant faults, freezing, or even worse, cyber attacks. And, there's a lot of clever, silly people out there that will hack into systems. And if someone's hacking into your payment system, is it going to be easier if all your money is in one place online? There's just so many different ways in which you can look at it in a derogatory way. For me, I'd like to keep cash, 50-50, it's a personal choice, and that's how it should be, is your choice, whether you want to, do your transactions in physical cash or whether you want to use the software, Apple Pay, things like that. That's all your choice. If this choice is taken away from you, is that really fair? And is it going to benefit you, or is it going to benefit someone else? It's a question you've got to ask. When you're running a small business, every penny counts. So if you're having to pay for a transaction and you have no choice but to pay for that transaction, is that fair? Is that going to push you out of business potentially? Are there going to be a lot of new companies coming out now with new payment terminals or software that are not going to be that good, but they're going to be slightly cheaper, and people are going to go to it and lose so much money? There's so many ways in which this could go wrong. Now, could it be good for a business? Yes. Not the cashless society, but using terminals for payment and things like that. There's nothing wrong with it. If they choose to do that, that's great. They can do that, because they can afford to take that hit. But if you're making a small company that's just starting out, maybe hasn't got a high turnover rate, and what they are actually turning over is getting eaten into by charges that don't need to be there, is it fair? Now, I'd love to hear what anyone else thinks about this. I'd love to have an interview with anyone, whether they think it's good or bad. If that's the case, great, drop a message into the link, or, go onto my website at takecarebusiness.co.uk and drop me a message. Until then, speak soon.